Hi there, I'm Clifford Bates, and welcome once again to Reading Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Today we're looking in Book 3, Chapter 8, which continues the question of courage, the examine of the virtue of courage, and in a more detailed examination of courage, right? Which is again tied to the reaction to fear, an excess, either responding to fear in the right amount, an excess or defect, right? The virtue is that mean moment, responding to fear in the right way, the right degree, to fearing the right things the right way, but still having confidence, right? So, H, courage is something of this sort. But then there are also other kinds of courage spoken of in 5 ways. So there's other kinds of courages, and there are 5 ways. First is the courage found in the citizen, since it seems most like courage in the proper speaking. In other words, more literally, political courage, found in political courage in that sense, and the Andrea courage that is politicae. This is the citizen. This is found in the citizen. It's properly speaking, political courage. For citizens seem to endure dangers on account of the legal penalties and reproaches involved, as well as on account of the honors at stake. So therefore we react. We act because of the legal penalties and reproaches that are involved. And also for the honors and dishonors too, to avoid it, right? For this reason too, people seem to be most courageous wherever cowards are dishonored and the courageous honored. So therefore, this is the idea that the first kind, as he's saying, is political courage, citizens. But this is we say, and that because there's penalty, cowardness or noble actions are penalized and dishonored, right? And then and that there's and proper actions and doing things that are nobly done. This is honored, right? Therefore, showing courage is therefore courage in those moments that the city needs. This is rewarded, honored, shown honor to it. So, in other words, for this too, people seem to be most courageous when cowards are dishonored and the courageous honored. And such are those whom Homer depicts. For example, Diomedes and Hector. Example, Polydamas will be the first to lay a reproach upon me. Again, this is Homer's Iliad 22 line, chapter 22, line 100, right? And Hector will one day declare among the Trojans, speaking in the assembly, the son of Titus by me, 23. Again, this is Iliad book 8. The full line, the son of Titus by me being put to flight, ran for the ships, right? This is in other words, Hector will declare amongst this person by me ran to the ships. This most closely resembles the courage spoken of here because it arises through virtue, excellence, arete, that is a sense of shame of and longing for what is beautiful, noble, since it is for honor, and through avoiding reproach, since reproach is shameful. In other words, doing what is noble, because this is honorable, and avoiding reproach, through a sense of shame and longing for the noble. Right, this is virtue. Someone might put it in the same category as those who are compelled by their rulers to fight. In other words, their rulers to fight. But they are inferior insofar as they do what they do, not through a sense of shame, but on account of fear. And because they are fleeing not what is shameful, but what is painful to them. So in other words, there's a difference between those who are compelled to fight. Someone might put this in the same category as that I'm being compelled to fight out of pain, whips and chains and things. In other words, I'm fighting to avoid pain. Okay, I'm not. I am. What they're doing through they're not doing it out of a sense of shame, but on account of fear, and because they are fleeing not from what is shameful, but what is painful to them. Okay. In other words, this is the idea in other words, okay, what happens when, in the war, the painfulness, you're doing it out of pain. In other words, in battle, a lot of times the conditions that you wanted to, you're sick and tired of the suffering and the misery, and you just want to get it over with, right? You just do something action. Well, that is not really courageous in that sense. That is, you're doing it not, in other words, he's suggesting that it's more, that the reason why one does this is for the sake of honor or avoiding shame. Okay, that not acting would be shameful. Here, the acting out of avoiding pain is less noble. It's not as, it's less acting to avoid pain, physical pain, and suffering is less. It's that out of avoiding doing what is noble, honorable, and to avoid shame and dishonor. Right. This is that whole point. Because they're fleeing not what is shameful but is hamper. For those in authority compel them, just as does Hector. Hector's compelling, right? Him who I might spy far off from the battle, crouching in fear. It is certain that he will not be able to flee the dogs, right? Book 2. It is Am again, not Hector, who speaks here. Right? Poetics 1285, where Aristotle corrects, attributes the speech to Am again. So here he wrongfully attributes to Hector what is really Armageddon. And I'm going to use the dogs. I see you're cowering over there. I'm going to throw dogs at you. So you go fight. In other words, this is you're doing this to avoid being attacked by the dogs, right? This is not courageous in that sense. The one who does that out of fear. And if those who assign military posts drive their men back into their ranks by beating them, they do the same thing as do those who station their men in front of trenches in such things. In other words, they drive their men back into their ranks by beating them, and they also station their men in front of trenches of such things. 25, he says, according to some commentators who take Herodotus, book 7, line 223 as their source, this was the practice of the Persians, who used to whip to force their troops forward at Thermopylae. In other words, this is the way the Russians fight. The Russians do this. The Russians in Ukraine use basically stormtrooper tactics. And the Russians always did this. The Russians had NKVD troops and security police with pointing guns of this to go fight. In other words, they're doing it to, the convicts are telling you, if you don't go fight, we're going to kill you. We're going to shoot you. This is not courage. This is they're doing to avoid pain. They're doing it. This is nothing courageous in that situation. They're full of, in other words, for all are using compulsion and therefore involuntary. Right? This is involuntary, and one ought not to be courageous on account of compulsion, but because it is noble to be such. In other words, it's not a question of compulsion. It's a question of this is a voluntary choice on your part. You choose this, okay? And you're doing it because it's noble or you wish to avoid dishonor, okay? Now, there is a compulsion because of fear and pain. Pain, to avoid pain and misery. And that is more involuntary in that sense than things like wishing to avoid dishonor or seeking honor in that sense, right? But experience of particular things, seems to be courage as well. So therefore, the next one. So for citizenship, surgery, this idea of war, right? And then but experience of particular things seem to be courage well. So too, it is that Socrates too supposed courage to be a knowledge, right? Or episteme, he says, or episteme, right? Science, seem to be a science, episteme. The definition of courage at Laches 199a and Protagoras 360 is this idea that courage is an episteme, right? Not a this is a form of knowledge, knowing. It's a knowing in that sense. Yet different people are experienced in different things. So different people have different experiences and different things. And in matters of war, it is the professional soldiers who are such. There was a professional in war. The professional soldiers are those who experience this. For there seems to be many false alarms in war, which professional soldiers especially see through. In other words, they know the false alarms. If you're experiencing it, you know the false alarms. You know what's really dangerous and what's not really dangerous. What's really a trouble? What should you really fear and what you shouldn't fear? Hence, they appear courageous because the others do not know what these false alarms are. So therefore, in other words, this is the experienced soldier, someone experienced, they know what is real and what's not. And therefore, from the people who don't know, the people who know look courageous, right? Then two professional soldiers are especially able to make an attack and not suffer one as the result of their experience, since they are able to use their weapons and possess the sort of things that are most excellent, most I think that's serious, most excellent for both making an attack good. I think this is most virtuous or most excellent for making an attack and not suffering oneself. Okay, I have to look at this line. Hold on. Are most excellent, in other words, because making an attack and not suffering oneself. They then are like armed men fighting unarmed ones, or trained athletes contesting with private amateurs. In other words, this is that. In other words, they have experience, they have knowledge, they know, they have no knowledge, and therefore those who didn't, they know what's better. They know what's real and what's not. And they're able to be armed men versus unarmed, right? And indeed, in these sorts of contests, it is not the most courageous who are fittest for battle, but those who are especially strong and have the best bodies, right? So therefore, in such things, it's the best the courageous are more strong, but the better bodies, right? They're strong and those who are the best bodies. But professional soldiers become cowards when the dangers outstrip them. The dangers outstrip them, and they are lacking in numbers and preparation. In other words, the trained soldiers, the professional soldiers, they're saying, the soldiers who are experienced, right? They become cowards when the dangers outstrip them, and they're lacking in numbers and preparations. For they are the first to flee, whereas the citizen soldiers who remain in place die, just as happened in the temple of Hermes. Now, professional soldiers, I think he means this is this idea. The professional soldiers are those who are in it for pay. What is professional soldiers? Is this his account of mercenaries? Is this Aristotle's account of mercenaries? The professional soldiers these are people who they're in it for pay. It's one level of its experience, but But I think what's happening here, he gives a reference to the boxer and to the professional athlete, right? The professional athletes versus the amateurs, right? This is the reference is professional versus the amateur, right? The professional soldier is a professional soldier. This is more like the mercenary in Machiavelli. And he says that what about the mercenary? The mercenary is he's not doing it out of love, he's doing it out of money. This is a profession for him. Okay? So therefore they know the things, they're better in the terms of this, they're aware. So there's double sense here. They're professional in the sense that they have a different care. They're in it for their profession. This is what they do. This is a techne or episteme, right? A knowing. But professionals become cowards when the dangers outstrip them, and they're lacking numbers and preparation. In other words, their knowledge is the only they want to lose here. In other words, their knowledge of warfare leads them in this situation. We know we will lose, therefore we're not going to do it. Right? They're the first to flee. Where citizen soldiers who remain in place die, just as happened at the temple of Hermes, right? 27, is that 27? Yeah, 27. According to the Scholastics, this refers to the battle which the Croatians, having been betrayed by the Phoenician commander uh, uh, Onomachus, nevertheless stood their ground and were slaughtered, while their booty and auxiliaries fled. Right. This is um, to citizen soldiers, it is shameful to flee, and death is more choice-worthy than the preservation of the kind indicated. In other words, the citizen soldier, the citizen soldier, it would be a disgrace to flee. With professional soldiers, it's no, you're not going to win, and there's another battle. In other words, this idea that maybe it's not shameful to die here. Uh, the citizen soldier will. It is shameful to flee, and death is more choice-worthy than preservation of the kind indicated. Whereas those who are from the very beginning were taking risks on the supposition that they were the stronger ones. Once they realize they are not, they flee because they fear death more than shame. But the courageous man is not of this sort. So therefore, it's interesting. This is a very interesting analogy that he seems to be arguing against the knowledge, that courage is not a knowledge. It is not an episteme. It is not even a techne in the sense, in the sense of this. It is, and it's not something done by those who are expertise or experienced in technical sense or professional sense, because their professional knowledge knows they'll win. In other words, if I do this, I will win. In this situation, I'm going to lose. So there's no point. I know I'm going to lose. Whereas the citizen, the amateur, or the citizen soldier, is going to what? He's going to see this as losing is now. If I flee, this is dishonorable. Now, is it better for the war winning the country? In other words, the question then is the general, what is better, to seek honor or to seek victory? If you seek victory, you might have to do some shameful things in order that you can achieve victory, right? That's the techne. This is the difference between a techne and the question of in other words, the question is to achieve victory is this moment. In other words, the argument here is that um, courage man is not of this sort, he says, right? Is the courageous man will choose, in other words, he will choose to fight because it's dishonorable to flee. The professional, seeing that there's professional cares only for victory, winning, not honor in the sense. Okay. And he sees that he will lose. And the goal is to win. So why die if only die if you should avoid it. If I'm going to win, maybe risking death is worth it. But if there's no chance to win, then dying here it achieves nothing. There's no benefit here in that sense, except honor in that sense. The citizen the person who's a citizen who's doing this for the sake of the city, in that sense, who thinks it's shameful to not fight here, is therefore that's a very interesting question here. We're lifted with a conundrum here. People refer to spiritedness, thumos, as courage, right? Spiritedness, thumos, as courage, because those who act on account of spiritedness do in fact seem to be courageous, like brute animals who turn on those who wound them, and because the courageous are spirited, right? So therefore, that because there is kind of a spirit, the courageous have a kind of spiritedness towards it, and it looks like that. The spiritedness looks like something courageous. That okay, it's but for spirited renders, in other words, spiritedness renders a person most ready to face dangers, and so that it is that Homer said he infused strength into his spirit, and he roused up his might and his spirit, and the strength piercing his nostril, and his blood boiled. Now, these phrases refer to the Iliad, and book 14, book 16, second to Iliad 5, and the third phrase to Odyssey 24, and the fourth does not appear to come from the text of Homer as we have them. The scholastics indicate that it comes from Theocritus, also see also Deanima 403a, right, 31. His work on Deanima, right? This idea that this is like, okay, this in spirit, thumos, the spiritedness kind of connects us to get us to go to act, right? Courageous men then act on account of the noble, of the beautiful, in that sense. Though their spiritedness does work together with them. Whereas the brute animal, on account of pain and the result of being struck or afraid, if they are in the forest or in the marsh, then they do not approach. If they are in the forest or in the marsh, then they do not approach. In other words, they're not going to approach. The animal in the forest, the marsh, they're not going to approach. But because of pain, or in other words, being struck or afraid, they're going to attack. Okay, in other words, you're doing this because if you're doing this because of pain or responding to pain, or responding to fear, in that sense, this is not really. This is more that spirit. It's spirited in that sense. It's the thumos that's driving the action. Here in courageous, it's not the pain and the fear that's driving the action. Rather, there's a collaboration. It's thumos. It's courageous men act on account of the nobleness, and though their spiritedness does work together, it's not okay. Thumos is not the cause of the action here. It is there is a kind of correlation that goes along with courage. Thumos goes along with courage because you're acting for what is noble, right? Hence, it is not courage to rush impulsively into danger. In other words, courage does not impulsively. Being driven by pain and spiritedness without seeing in advance any of the terrible things. In other words, here is it is not courage to simply just rush and perish. In other words, because you don't see, you don't look at, you don't know, you're not looking at the dangerous things. You're doing it because of the pain and fear you're suffering now. And you're moving, and the fear and the forced spiritedness, thumos, is moving you forward, right? Without seeing in advance any of the terrible things involved. In this way, at any way, even asses would be courageous when they are hungry. For though they're being beaten, they nevertheless do not move off from their grazing. In other words, they're hungry, they're eating, they need to eat. They're not going to even. And adulterers too, on account of their desire, do many daring things. Right. This is on the line in the line that follows. It is not courage, therefore, to rush impulsively into danger on account of pain or spirit. Largely repeats a previous line and is omitted from the best manuscript. In other words, the next line is, it is not courage, therefore, to rush impulsively into danger on account of pain or spiritedness, right? In that sense, there's a repeated line here. They did. So adulterers also do they do many daring things, but they're doing it because of what? They're doing it out of either they do those daring things because they're going to be punished in that sense, right? They're escaping the husband, getting caught, yet the courage that arises through spiritedness appears to be most natural kind. In other words, the courage that arises through spiritedness is the most natural kind, and if it includes choice, and that the end for the sake of which the act ought to be done, it is courage. In other words, the act ought to be done. The act ought to be. In other words, the question it's there is stuff. Courage arises from spiritedness. Can motivate us to do things when it's natural in that sense, right? And it involves a choice, and that the end for the sake of which the act is it ought to be done. Should you do it? This, it is courage. And certainly when human beings are angry, when human beings are angry, they feel pain. When they exact revenge, they feel pleasure. So yes, in other words, they're angry. I'm angry. That's painfulness. That when they get revenge, they get pleasure. Those who fight on account of anger or revenge are fit for battle, but they're not courageous, since they fight not on account of the noble, the beautiful, or as reason commands, but on account of their passions. So I'm angry. I'm angry at this. I'm just mad at you. I just want to go at you because I'm mad at you, or because I am, I want vengeance. I want vengeance. This is not no. This is not on account of the noble, or reason is not commanding this, but on passions. Yet they are in possession of something closely resembling courage. This is something, in other words, the people who do sort of anger and those who are getting vengeance, what they do kind of resembles courage, but it's not pure courage. Nor indeed are those of good, in other words, nor indeed are those of good hope courageous. So therefore, the question of those who are of good hope, if I believe that, if there's a sense that I'm going to win this, it's a foregone conclusion. I'm going to win this. There's no real doubt in my mind that this is not going to be won. That's not courageous, because they have won many victories on many occasions. They are confident in the middle of dangers, and they do resemble the courageous, since both are confident. But courageous men are confident on account of the points or stated previously, whereas the hopeful are confident because they suppose they are strongest, and they would suffer nothing in the event. In other words, their estimation and their supposition is that they're stronger, and it's not going to. There's no pain. The likelihood of this failing and not is low in that sense, right? They're not courageous in that sense. Because they are both confident, but the courageous man is confident on account of the points previously stated, whereas the hopeful are confident because they suppose they're strongest and would suffer nothing in resent. Those who are drunk also do this sort of thing, for they come to be of good hope. They don't care. They're drunk. They're just good hope. They're senseless to the dangers in that sense, right? And they just do it. But when such things as they hope for do not turn out for them, they flee. In other words, once they the hope, what if the hope does not manifest itself, then at that very moment that they recognize that it's not manifest, their hope is not going to happen, they flee. Yet, as we noted, it belongs to the courageous man to endure what is and appears to be frightening to a human being, because it is beautiful, noble to do so, and shameful not to. In other words, the courageous man will think when it goes bad, he's not going to. When all of a sudden it doesn't look like he's going to. In other words, the hope is lost at that moment. That there's a kind of hope and your confidence is in question. You don't have an overcome. That it's not sure anymore. It's kind of it's at risk, and that there's probably going to maybe it looks like you can lose. Right? It is at that moment you resist. You don't flee. You don't succumb to fear. Because why? It is noble to do so, to keep on fighting. In other words, to what appears, endure what is and appears to be frightening to a human being, because it is noble to do so and shameful not to. Hence, it also seems that it is more courageous to be fearless and calm, admit unforeseen dangers, than admits those that are clear beforehand. In other words, it seems more courageous that to be fearless and calm admits unforeseen dangers than those that are clear beforehand. The former reaction would depend more on one's circumstances, one's characteristics, right? It's not circumstances, one's characteristics. Since fearlessness in the face of such unforeseen dangers would stem less from preparation. In other words, you're not prepared. In other words, you didn't know the circumstances, unforeseen situations. In other words, it's in other words, it is more characteristic. It seems more courageous to be fearless and calm because of unforeseen damages than versus foreseen understood ones. Because what is it? It would the former reaction would depend more on one's characteristics in that sense. Your character, your character. In other words, you're not going to be put off that all of a sudden the situation changes. You're not going to, okay, it's things different. Maybe I'm not going to overreact in fear. In other words, he's saying that's clear beforehand because there's one more character. Since fearlessness in the face of such unforeseen dangers would stem less from preparation. That's what preparation. There's no preparation in this. It's your character. It's your character that's showing itself. In the case of foreseen dangers, the person would make his choice on the basis of calculation and reason. Whereas in the case of southern danger, he would choose it according to his characteristics. In other words, there's two different things. In other words, the one person, if I foreseen stuff, it's a calculation, and reason has been played into this question. But if it's sudden, there's no chance of calculation and reasoning. So it's your character, your characteristic will determine this. Whether you are someone who does not will resist fear of those who succumb to it, right? But the ignorant too appear courageous. There's another problem. In other words, the ignorant too appears courageous. So the ignorant appears courageous. They don't know the danger. They don't know the danger, right? They're ignorant of the danger. They don't know the danger. And they are not far from those who are of good hope. So the good hope, those who overestimate, those who believe it's inevitable, I'm going to win. In other words, I have too much confidence. I have good hope. I'm sure that I'm going to win. This is kind of confidence. Good hope is assured confidence. I'm going to win. But and the ignorance and there's a similarity between ignorance and excessive hope, good hope. Those are good hope. Yet they are inferior insofar as they have no claim to merit. Whereas those who have good hope do. So good hope has merit because their intention. In other words, ignorance is I don't know any better. The person with good hope, he's doing it either through his knowledge of the situation or the perception of understanding of what's there in his experience of things. Okay, his perception and his experience leads him that he will win. That's good hope. Whereas the ignorant doesn't pay attention to these things and it's insensible to them, right? Um, uh, Yet they are inferior insofar as they have no claim to merit, right? Those who are, yet they are far from those. They're inferior because they have no, whereas those who do have merit in that sense. Hence, the latter, in fact, remain in the station for a certain time, right? The latter, in other words, the latter, uh, 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 um, the good, those who have good hope, the latter, in fact, remain in their station for a certain time. But if those who have been deceived discern that things are different from what they surmise, in other words, those who believe something, right? Those who good hope, right? Those who they deceive, discerning that things are different from what they. So who are the latter? The latter, in fact, remain in their station. The ignorant will remain in their station for a certain time. But those who have been deceived, discerning the things are different than which they surmise, they flee, just as happened to the Argives when they encountered the Laconians, supposing them to be Scythicanians, right? Again, this is Xenophon Hellenica, book 4, chapter 4, right? In other words, they thought the Argives thought these people to be the Scythians, not not an enemy, but maybe an ally. And then they discovered the Laconians, and they, oh my God, there's the wrong guy. We're flee. Okay, that's from Aristotle's giving the account from Xenophon of what sort of what sort the courageous are, as well as those who merely seem courageous now have been said. So what who are really courageous, and what those who seem to be. In other words, here he ends the discussion of who are the courageous, particularly which seems to be the politically courageous, right? And then those who seem to be courageous in that sense. Okay, that's very much interesting. And he ends it right here. So let's stop here. We will, if you have any questions or issues that you come to hear about, please put them below, and I'll respond to them when I see them. If you liked it, hit the like button, please. Share it on social media, share it with your friends, bring attention to it in that sense. If hitting the like button and these things help to get algorithm in that sense. If you want to, if you're not subscribed, please do subscribe. It helps the channel grow a little bit. If you know someone who might be interested in what we do here and the topics we're dealing with, please bring it to their attention. Encourage them to subscribe. If you didn't like what we did here and you think there's something wrong, or you have a criticism of what I did, doing, or something that you think I said something incorrect, or you have a different take on it, well, you can always hit thumbs down, but also say why in the comments. Another thing is that you can follow me on social media. Links are below. If you want to follow me in that sense to see see what I'm up to and things like that, or you want to know more about me as an academic scholar and follow my research and check me out, or check some of my both published and forthcoming research, you can check my academic social media beneath that. If you want to help me do what I do here, through means, you can use social media to find my university email, and you can always send me an Amazon gift card, or a Google thing, or who knows. You can pick these, whatever. But also you can do so through Subscribe Star Patreon. You can contribute through Subscribe Star and Patreon. The links are below. And then the other way you can help is if you want to. If you'd like to buy a book, buy one of my books. The books listed, the title of the books listed below. You can order them through any online bookstore, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever, or you can order through your bookstore. Now, if you know someone, you buy it for yourself, buy it for a friend, buy it for a student. Someone's going to do this. Another thing you can do is, particularly if you're studying Aristotle, of course, the books I always encourage you to buy them. But if you really want to help me, and you know someone who's going to be doing something in Aristotle, please buy the notebook for Aristotle's Politics, which is and buying it through Lulu. I'll get the money from what the bookstore will get, and that's the best way to do it. Well, that's it. We'll continue next time when we look at chapter 9. So that's it for the day. Take care. Have a good day. See you later. Bye-bye.